is survival, self-survival, to take care of oneself, to be well. And when an individual finds themselves making decisions, making judgments that are causing harm to their own lives, that to me is death. You look at drug use. Now we're crossing the lines, from African Americans to everyone. You look at drug use, causing harm. You look at alcohol abuse, causing harm. You look at abusing others, family members, wives, children, causing harm. You look at our prison systems, full to capacity, building new prisons. We just built another juvenile detention center here in this city, twice the capacity. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. Folks are doing bad things. Folks are harming themselves. Folks are harming harming others as well. Where there's no vision, where there is no hope, the people perish. And that's what we see today, a hopeless situation. So whether you're African Americans, whether you're Caucasians, Asians, Latinos, Native Americans are a perfect example. The plight of the Native American in this land. Hopelessness. Where there's no hope, where there's no vision, the people perish. And so when we talk about love, we talk about charity, we talk about in this 1 Corinthians 13:13, when we talk about faith and hope and charity, recognize faith and hope are the stair steps to charity, to love. And then Jesus is saying that the greatest commandment is loving God, and second to that is loving each other. So we see an entire stair step here. We see the faith, the ultimate is to be in a place where we love God with all of our heart, all of our mind, all of our soul, all of our being, right? And that's the ultimate step according to Jesus, the greatest commandment. And so then we find, and that's about love. So then we find Paul giving us the first part of the stair step, even to getting to love, is first faith, which God gives every man, but then hope. So we have been without hope, not just in this country, but in the world. There's been a lack of hope. Everything is jacked up. And after hope, once hope is attained, is charity, is love, is how we relate to our brothers and sisters. And we haven't gotten to the hope part yet. That's why our world is in such turmoil. That's why our world is so jacked up. There's fighting and killing and murders and hates, and even the churches and religions who are supposed to be worshiping the creator of all mankind, we are hating each other. Oh, you don't believe like I do, you're going to hell. Well, you don't believe like I do, you're going to hell. Well, this is where we're at in our religions. Those of us who are supposed to be embracing God, loving God, which is the ultimate, we haven't been able to love our neighbor, to love each other. And Jesus is telling us that we can't love God until we love each other. And Paul is telling us love, charity can only be attained once there's hope. And hope is a stair step that we've been stuck on, that we've been lacking. So all we've really got is faith. Now, faith is a wonderful thing, but don't take credit for your faith, because according to Scripture, every man has been given a measure of faith. So it's not by your act or your will that you've attained faith. Faith was given to you simply. And so you can't even really, and just to digress a fraction, is you can't take credit for your belief, okay? Because your belief in God, your belief in the religious system that you've embraced has to do with faith that you didn't create, that God has given you. So you can't even take credit for believing. And if you can't take credit for believing, you can't condemn someone else for not believing, because you only believe because you were given a measure of faith by the Creator. You need to hear what I'm saying. So the faith that you have is nothing to celebrate. That was a gift given to every human being by the Creator. You're still stuck on that first step. And hope is the next step. Hope is the next step. And I'm telling you, if you don't have charity, if you don't have love for your fellow human being, it's because your life is hopeless and without hope. And what's even worse than simple hopeless is being hopeless and not even recognizing that you're hopeless. Generations and generations and generations, birthing generations from a previous generation that was hopeless. And so we embrace these religions to try to justify ourselves and to try to give ourselves the appearance that we have something, when really it's just empty. Our religious practices, our ardent traditions and practices are empty attempts to give the impression that we're well. But no, we're not well. If you don't love your neighbor, if you don't love your Muslim neighbor, if you don't love your gay neighbor, if you don't love human beings that God created, if you don't love those that Jesus laid down his life for, then you don't love God. And if you don't love God, it's because you don't love those that God created. You can't love those that God created if your life is hopeless. Okay? Now you've been given that. So there's stair steps. That's all I'm trying to tell you. You got faith. You've got hope. You've got charity, which is love. And there are two kinds of love. There's the love for your fellow human being, and there's the love for God. You can't love God if you don't love your fellow human being. Charity. You won't love your fellow human being if you don't have hope. Because according to Paul in Corinthians, the greatest of these three, faith, hope, and charity, is charity, love. The stair step to love is hope. Where there is no vision, where there is no hope, the people perish. The people cast off restraint. The American Standard Version says, when there is no vision, where there is no hope, the people cast off restraint. What does casting off restraint do? It's doing whatever you want to do to satisfy your carnal self. Casting off restraint. That's why our prisons are full. You have what I want, so I'm going to take it from you. I don't like what you said, so I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to do what I want because it's what I want, no matter what the circumstances, no matter who I infringe upon, whose rights I infringe upon. There is no restraint. That's casting off restraint. We need to recognize that. And when there is no hope, we cast off restraint. And if we're casting off restraint, we don't have love, we don't have charity for our fellow human beings. And if we don't have charity or love for our fellow human beings, we don't love God. So again, the whole point of this whole thing is we're stuck on faith. So when we're offered some hope, and that's when I was bringing it back to the African Americans, but we can apply it across the board to any area in our life where there is hopelessness. So the African Americans are saying, man, I never seen this before. Look at this black man. Maybe he has a chance. Who knows? But that hope is there. And it sort of revived a lot of people. And you see them acting, with a renewed vigor. Hope. That's the importance of hope. See, it's not about change, because everybody wants change. It's when the hope for change becomes real. That's when folks wake up from that death. From perishing. Very important. I tell the story a lot of times about the woman with the issue of blood. And I've never really focused on the idea of hope. I focused on a situation that was hopeless. But we really need to see the impact of the hope when she heard that Jesus was in town. Her hopelessness to me was like a darkened, well, that she had been sinking in, that she had been living in for 12 years, and maybe not even knowing what hope looked like. Hope may be sort of symbolized by light, but when that light pierces the darkness, even if you've never seen light before, you recognize there's something different about that, and that difference is good. And that light is hope. And that woman with the issue of blood, before she got well, before she wanted change, You know, she didn't want to be sick. She didn't want her life to be jacked up. You know, we can pretty much assume that. That's what I was telling this brother on the internet that was asking me about my belief system, is that we need to begin studying and really understanding the life and the teachings of Jesus, but couple that with some common sense, okay? So when we look at the life of this girl, the Bible doesn't tell us that she was hopeless. It doesn't